I'd now like to introduce Martin Newman, the consumer champion, retail expert and author. Martin's going to talk to us about changing consumer behaviour and what has changed since the pandemic and how we can get back on our feet again. Martin has worked for over 35 years, leading the multi-channel operations for some of the world's most recognisable brands, including Burberry, Intersport, Pentland Brands, Harrods and Ted Baker. His best-selling book, 100 Practical Ways to Improve Customer Experience, is seen as definitive within the sector and was shortlisted for Business Book of the Year in 2019. And you might also have seen Martin on the BBC news programmes following retail during the pandemic. Following Martin's career in the consumer sector, he founded the global e-commerce and digital consultancy Practicology, which was sold in 2018, having scaled up to a global staff of 100 in offices across the UK, the EU, Middle East and Asia. Martin has since set up the Customer First Group and the new consumer-facing website, Customer Service Action. So I'm now going to hand over to Martin.
Yeah, thank you very much. I'm just sharing my screen now. Thanks a lot, Karen. I appreciate the introduction, and I think that you've already probably allowed me to throw away the first few slides with the fantastic introduction that you gave me. I'm going to talk about the pandemic and the post-pandemic consumer to give you some insight in terms of how I think things are going to change. I don't really need to talk about me because Karen just did a fantastic job of doing that. So she talked about my background on the client side. She talked about the business Practicology that I scaled and sold to a company called Pattern. I'm also a board advisor with ClearPay, the leading buy now, pay later provider. I'm involved with a fantastic charity called In Kind Direct, who support thousands of other charities. I'm the non-executive chair of the Scouts, and I'm also the chair of the advisory board for the Mayborn Group, and their best known brand you may well know is Tommy Tippy, which is a drinking cup for infants. And as Karen mentioned, I've been involved with one of the AIS brands. I was actually head of marketing for Intersport a rather long time ago, way back in 1995-96. Karen talked about my book, 100 Practical Ways to Improve Customer Experience. It was shortlisted for the Business Book of the Year Awards 2018. Rather rudely, they gave it to somebody, or sorry, 2019. Rather rudely, they gave that award to someone else. Who knows, maybe second time lucky with my new book that comes out on the 3rd of May called The Power of Customer Experience. I might be more successful, we shall see. That book, just in case you're interested, is available for pre-order now on Amazon. And as Karen mentioned, you do see my ugly mug popping up not only on webinars, but occasionally on BBC, Sky News, Channel 5, and so on and so forth. And I run a website called Customer Service Action. I'm trying to be a force for positive change. I'm trying to bring consumer insight to brands and retailers to enable them to do a better job of serving customers in the first place. So we'll see how your sense of humour is doing this morning. I think mine's on fire, hopefully. Coronavirus, shift happens. So we've been through a fair bit of shift in the last year, which is fair to say. The good news is we're on the pathway to coming out of it. Over that period of time, it's fairly obvious that consumer confidence has taken a fairly significant hit. And if you look at the Consumer Confidence Index, it is at an all-time low, and you'd have to go back to the global financial crash of 2007, 2008 to see it at similar levels. And not surprisingly, household saving ratio, according to the Office of National Statistics, is at the highest level ever. So we've never seen anything like the saving that consumers have basically gone through. Now, some of that's been forced on us because we maybe haven't had the opportunities to spend the way we would normally do. But I think a lot of that is also down to the fact that we've been cautious and we didn't really know what was going to happen or when this whole thing was going to come to an end. You might well be sitting there thinking that everything has changed, and you'd be quite entitled to feel that way given everything that we've been through. But I don't believe that it has. I think some of what we've experienced will be lasting change, some of it will be temporary, some of it will be a bit of a hybrid. So let me talk through that now. How we feel has become more important than who we are. This is my darling wife Laura and I. We managed to get away for a week to the Algarve in August. And like everybody else on the plane, we were all slightly horrified by the experience, not knowing whether we were going to get out the other end in one piece. These are my darling daughters, Saskia and Antonia, in a restaurant prior to the pandemic. And the reason why I wanted to show them is that they fall into this age category, 18 to 24-year-olds. And I did some research earlier on in the pandemic to ask consumers about how their behaviour was changing and how they thought it would change. And this was a question about whether or not you would use a changing room. And you might be surprised to know that the youngest age segment were one of the ones who were the most traumatised and the least likely to ever want to go back into a changing room because of the fear of basically picking up COVID. So I think what you can find from this is that it's affected, all age groups in different ways, and it's much more, as I say, about who you feel rather than who you are as a sort of traditional segment of customer. Work from home obviously changes a lot of things. So supermarkets feel busy, they might not feel safe to some of you, and many people have got used to buying groceries online for the first time, during the pandemic, and grocery sales have more than doubled as a percentage of total grocery retail. Grocery sales online, I should say, have more than doubled. It's now about 20% of total grocery retail sales in the UK. And of course, as we work from home, we're going to stay local, we're going to work local, and we're going to shop local. And that lends itself to the rise of independent retail. I've been predicting that independent retail for some time would do well, because I felt and I feel that it has more to offer than a lot of the homogenous national retail propositions that are maybe a little bit too samey. So independent retailers have been getting quite a lot of loyalty. They've also been really behaving like service providers and delivering great services to consumers in their community who have been isolating, shielding, and haven't even been able to get to the shops. This is my Londis in Hadley Wood, where I live in North London. They've been doing home deliveries and all sorts of things to look after their local community. The whole work from home thing is temporary in the sense of we're not all going to be working from home the way we are at the moment. We're going to land in a hybrid model where maybe half of the week we'll spend in the office and half of the week we'll spend working at home. But one of the things that will change, I used to go to a spinning studio in London every day, and now I've got a spin bike in my house. Will I want to go back into that hot, sweaty studio, or will it just be more convenient for me to continue doing my workout at home? So I think any consumer business has to think about how it can leverage digital and its physical presence to have more of a hybrid model than it's had in the past, and that will enable you as a brand to continue to engage effectively with your customer base. Work from home also impacts what you sell. So I'm sure we've all had a few jokes about what we've been wearing when we've been on our Zoom and Teams calls over the last year. And we've seen it even on television where people have been very smartly dressed from the waist up, but then they've been wearing jogging bottoms or maybe nothing, or from the waist down. So, shirts, formal wear, ties, dresses, suits, shoes, there are lots of product categories that have underperformed during the pandemic because we just haven't needed to buy them. However, from May 2021 onwards, I'm predicting what I'm calling revenge consumption. That revenge consumption will probably start in April when retail opens. I'm sure, like me, you can't wait to get back out there. I've already got my haircut booked for the 12th of April, and I can't wait to go out and do some shopping in the stores because I love shopping in a physical environment, as I'm sure many of you do. We'll be getting on planes, we'll be doing all sorts of things that we've been deprived of the opportunity to do over this period of time. I'm going to talk now about what I call a framework for customer centricity. So people use this term customer centricity, putting the customer at the heart of all you do, being customer first. I've been using these terms for years. And to be honest with you, I wrote my first book and my second book because I wasn't really sure even in my own mind exactly what that meant. How do you do it? And I kind of knew what it meant or what the intention was, but how do you actually go about delivering it? And the first thing you have to do is put your own people first in your own organization. One of the brands that does this really well is Home Depot in the US. They trust their staff with the autonomy to give discounts of up to $50 to customers in store in order to close the deal. They also support their colleagues and their associates in financial emergencies. They reimburse their tuition. They encourage them to upskill themselves and to learn new things. This is a real great example of a business that puts its people first. And what you tend to find with all the examples I'm going to give you now is when you look at the market cap and the share price of the business over a sustained period of time, albeit every brand that's on the stock market has a dip now and again, you can see a continual move in the right direction. And you can see this across every element of businesses that are truly customer first. So my first tip is look after your people and they will look after your customers. The next one is about brands needing to be ultimately where their customers are. So you're probably, we're all listening to the news, and I wouldn't be surprised if you thought, or you were worried about the high street, dying and all the things that you're hearing, all the negative stuff that you're hearing. The reality is, prior to the pandemic, 81% of sales were still in a physical environment, 19% were online. At the moment, it's approximately 26%, according to the Office of National Statistics. And I predict by the end of 2021, it'll be 28%. So that means that 72% of sales across all retail sectors are still going to take place in a physical environment. Of course, if you want to be where your customers are, for some of you, that will mean being on the A to Z of retail or the A to Z of anything you want to buy, and that is Amazon. Whether you like them or not, at the end of the day, you can buy anything from them, and most of us have been taking advantage of that over this period of time. But of course, Amazon are no longer just an online business. They started opening bookshops a number of years ago, and you probably have read as well that they've opened up their first Amazon Go store in the UK, where basically you don't have to get your credit or your debit card out, you don't have to pay by phone, you literally pick something up and walk out the store, and they've created technology to enable you to do this. As you can probably tell, I'm from Glasgow, and to be honest with you, we don't need the technology. We've been just picking up and walking out the store for years. Tesla, you can buy their cars in shopping centres. And I remember when they first opened in Brent Cross, which is my nearest shopping centre, and I kind of thought, well, that's really weird. Why is a car dealer opening up there? And it dawned on me, it's the democratization of buying a car, just the way that e-commerce has democratized retail. They're democratizing the buying a car, the experience of buying a car, because you can now, they're taking the product, if you like, to you rather than asking you to come to them in their out-of-town car dealerships 10 miles away, which aren't always that convenient. Who would argue with Tesla? They are now currently valued at around $665 billion, or if you want to look at it another way, their market cap is more than 3 times that of Ford, General Motors, and Volkswagen put together. So I certainly wouldn't bet against Tesla, and they are a customer-first business. I'm not sure whether or not any of you want to hear a secret. Hopefully you do. Might be too early for you. So I may have alluded to this already. The high street isn't dead. Shock horror. So despite everything you've been hearing and everything you've been reading about, it's not dead. It's going through an evolution. It's been going through that for the last few years. It has to evolve. It has to become a better experience, but it will do. And lots of people like myself, the government, the High Street Task Force, AIS, and others are doing everything they can to ensure that consumers get a better experience. And it is experience, and it's experiential retail that will lure us back. Sorry to share this with you at this time of the day. This is my good self in the CoverGirl store in Times Square in New York. This is a beauty brand that used to only sell through other people's channels. They opened up their first direct-to-consumer store in Times Square, and they're using augmented reality and virtual reality to allow you to interface with the product. So you don't need to physically try the product on. Excuse me, you can pick it up, and it superimposes eyeliner and lipstick and everything to give you an idea of what it looks like. But it's really starting to bring the experience of buying beauty in that environment to life. They've got training in the store. They've got just a brilliant brand experience. So next time you're able to jump on a plane and get to New York after the pandemic, make sure you take yourself to the CoverGirl store. This is in Colchester, and it's a lovely little vintage retailer called Best Days. And one of the things that I think is going to change, and one of the things that the independent retailers that are on the call or on the webinar today can do, is think about how you get use out of your store for more time over the course of the day and the week, and how you make it more relevant to consumers. So what these guys do is, you might see there's a cafetiere. You can go in, you can take a seat, you can have a muffin, you can have a cup of tea or coffee. So they're generating revenue through that. They're increasing dwell time in the store. That increases engagement with product. People buy more products. And on a Friday or a Saturday, what you can't see is that all the product is on rails. They move all the product off the floor. They've got a little stage at the back of the shop, and they have bands in, and they run gigs. So they're really thinking about how to maximize the opportunity, and it has a great impact, I think, on the brand and how consumers perceive them, as well as generating additional revenue opportunities. The great man Peter Drucker coined this phrase, which is culture eats strategy for breakfast. You can spend all the time you want thinking about what your strategy needs to be, but the culture of your business and your purpose and your values are the most important thing I think you can just about think about right now. And that involves obviously thinking about how you treat your people. And brands that put purpose before profit, if you start with profit, you end up, if that's your starting point, you make the wrong decisions. Whereas if you start with purpose at the heart of what you want to try to achieve, then you will become a more profitable business. And there can be no better example of that than Patagonia in the States, North America. Often you go onto the homepage of their website. This is for those of you that don't know, I'm sure most of you do. They sell outdoor products, sports equipment, camping equipment, etc. You go into their website, you don't see them promoting product often on the homepage. Here, they are promoting the cause of the indigenous population of Alaska called the Gochin, who are fighting to protect their future because the oil companies are coming into Alaska, drilling, killing the wildlife, killing the environment, and obviously destroying their future. So that is a cause-related business, and they are commercially successful year after year after year after year. And guess what? They have a more engaged customer base than the vast majority of other consumer businesses you can think of. And therefore, brands with a clear sense of purpose over the last 12 years, or over a 12-year period, according to Kantar research, have enjoyed a 175% increase in the value of their business and their brand. Compare that to brands that don't have a strong purpose. They're roughly on average 100% less than that. So it has a massive impact on the profitability and the valuation of the business. Looking at the other side of the fence, then, of course, most of you will be aware of Das Problem, going back to 2015, Volkswagen and their horrendous greenwashing, where they told us that the emission on their cars were at an appropriate level for the environment, and then we found out they were lying to us. And lo and behold, if you look over here, you can see 2015, getting towards 2016, the share price dropped off a cliff, and it has never recovered. They're essentially 35% down from the point of when their share price and their market cap was at its highest. And that's not because they don't make good cars anymore. That's because consumers don't trust them anymore. Hotel Chocolat, again, looking at the positive side, they have a planet pledge that 100% of their packaging will be compostable, reusable, recyclable by the end of this year. None of this kicking the can down the road to 2030 or 2050, which you hear a lot of big businesses doing. They're taking ownership of it and they're doing something about it, and they're standing up and they're telling consumers what they're doing. And again, if you look at the Hotel Chocolat share price, since they launched on the stock market 5 or 6 years ago, it's doubled, right? And it's been sustainable growth over that period. Now, they do lots of things well. They obviously make product that people want to buy. That's always going to be the starting point. But they are a truly customer-centric business who understand their customer base, and they're authentic, they're genuine, and consumers respond accordingly. We're heading into a time of what I would call conscious consumption. This is where we become much more aware of what we're buying and whether we really need to buy something in the first place. So this little model here of, buying something, making something, thrifting, swapping, borrowing, or using what you have, will it look quite like this? Maybe not, but what will happen is over the next few years, you'll walk into a retail store and you'll have a choice of buying something completely new, buying something that's been upcycled or recycled, buying a second-hand product, or even renting. And I think that's the sort of consumer choice that we are looking for as we move forward. Customers are diverse, and so must consumer-facing businesses be. 20% of the UK population is an ethnic minority. Women drive 70 to 80% of all consumer purchasing decisions. And yet, if you look at the majority of boards of directors of most of our businesses, particularly in the FTSE 350, there are only currently 12 or 13 female CEOs of the biggest 350 businesses in the UK. How can that possibly be? These are not all consumer-facing businesses, but it still doesn't add up. So I do believe that from an ethnicity point of view, from a gender point of view, from a demographic point of view, businesses need to become far more focused on who their customers are and having a management team and a board that represent their customers. Then you can make much better decisions strategically about what you're doing as a business. You may or may not know there are 14 million disabled consumers in the UK today, and they are so badly catered for. Both of my daughters have a hidden disability, and I know from first-hand experience of what it's like to try and get a wheelchair into a store, or somebody's visually impaired. You know, I interview consumers who are visually impaired with guide dogs. They keep telling me they get turned away from the majority of retail stores that they want to go into. And that's not because that's the law, because that's actually against the law, but that's because the people who are working on the front line of those businesses don't know any better. They haven't been trained properly. But the thing that really I find most astonishing about this is the commercial impact. If you knew that 14 million, or 25% of the population of the UK, had a visual, a hidden, a hearing, or any form of impairment, a disability, whether in a wheelchair, whatever it happens to be, wouldn't you want to make sure you did all you could to cater for that customer base? Because it's huge. I love businesses that put values before value. Here's another great example. A family business, Timson. Sometimes you walk past one of their stores, you'll see an A-board outside that says, if you're unemployed, you need an outfit clean for an interview, we'll clean it for free. Most of you probably know that one of the great things that Timson does is it offers ex-prisoners the opportunity to be rehabilitated. So a lot of the people that are running their branches have been in jail, and they've given them the opportunity to, as I say, to rehabilitate. Brilliant business. Very limited middle management. So you've got the board of the business, which is the family, some of the senior management, and then you've got the people who run the branches. So it's a very linear structure, and it enables them to be very agile and make decisions very, very quickly and implement them very quickly. And I want to finish off by talking about the fact that a customer is for life and not just for Christmas. I coined this term in Retail Week about 10 years ago when I was writing a column in there regularly. And I was just really frustrated about the lack of focus on customer retention. You know, we all focus on bringing people in the door, the top of the funnel, as we call it in digital these days. You know, Google AdWords, paid search, Google Shopping, all the rest of it. But we pay very little attention to what would it take to maximize the lifetime value of the customer, and what would the value of that be, and how would we go about achieving that. According to the Harvard Business Review, a 5% increase in customer retention leads to a 95% increase in profit. Obviously depends on the product category, but that's huge, that's massive. So why don't you have a think about return on involvement? We all think of return on investment. How about return on involvement? If we involve our customers and we engage with them more than we do traditionally, what might the commercial value of that be? This is a Scandinavian brand that I occasionally buy some of my underwear from. And when I made my first purchase, I had this little card with my goods that just thanked me for the order and offered me a 10% discount off my next order, and my name was handwritten. You don't need big expensive pieces of technology to do this stuff. This is easy to do. You just need the cards printed. You know, somebody in the warehouse sees who it's for, writes the name in, off it goes, and guess what? Lots of customers like me make that second purchase. Levi's, excuse me, during the pandemic, this is my mask here, just to prove this came as a random act of kindness, which I thought was great. I bought a couple of pairs of Levi's early on, back in March or April, and this came with my order. Really simple, but really effective, nice little touch. Here's my local barbershop. This is where I'm going on the 12th of April in Cockfosters, just a mile away from where I live. On the left is my barber, Alex, and these guys it's basically 4 Greek Cypriot barbers. 4 Greek Cypriot barbers, one barbershop, nearly 240,000 followers on Instagram. They now go around the world, or at least they were prior to the pandemic and well afterwards, delivering training all over the world. They go out on stage in Brazil and they're treated like rock stars. Thousands of people come to see them just cutting hair. Why? Because they do a great job of cutting hair. They post the content, they're engaging, they have a laugh with customers, they share it on Instagram, and they're a classic example of a business that's turned customers into fans. So what can you do to turn your customers into fans? Because that takes the whole opportunity up to another level entirely. I hope you enjoyed that. Here are some of my contact details. If you want to know more, you can link in with me. You can email me if you have any other questions. We are going to do a Q&A in a minute. You can look at some of my content on TV. You can follow my podcast on Spotify and Apple, or you can follow me on Twitter. And without further ado, we're going to have a Q&A, and I'm going to hand you back now to Karen.
Thank you very much, Martin. That was absolutely fascinating. A few questions for you. When you talk about purpose, how do you think that the independents can sort of have a purpose Would that be with their local community possibly, rather than doing something that might be an international cause?
Sure, absolutely. I mean, purpose, maybe as a hierarchy, you want to think of it as social responsibility. But don't think of it as corporate social responsibility, because that turns it into something very sterile, which becomes a tick box exercise in bigger businesses. There's a great opportunity. It doesn't matter if you've got one store. You could, for example, you could offer customers the opportunity to come in and recycle their products. They could come in and donate products to people in need in the local community. There's all sorts of things that you could do to engage your community to be more socially responsible. It's not just about the environment. So that's one way, from a purposeful point of view, of what could you do to give something back. So I think from a purpose point of view, I often think of it in the context of giving something back and being able to demonstrate, in the process, that you're genuinely authentic and that this is something that you care about. And I think that when you look at these brands like Patagonia and Kathmandu and a whole bunch of others who are truly purposeful brands, they perform incredibly well year after year after year, because they have a level of engagement with their customers. Their customers are fans. They're not customers. In fact, they're beyond fans. They actually love the brand because they love what it stands for. There's no reason why a small independent retailer can't achieve the same thing within their own community.
Mm-hmm. And what about engaging with maybe the next generation? You talked about the younger consumer. A lot of our members, their store customers are in the older demographic. How might they move towards appealing to a slightly younger demographic, the next generation?
Sure. Well, that's a great question, and a very relevant one, because at the end of the day, millennials. So in case you don't know, millennials essentially probably go, I think the oldest millennials now are about 41 or 42. Gen Zs were born 95, 96. So Gen Zs now are up to 24, 25 years of age. And then above that, they're millennials up to the early 40s. But these two segments of customers are absolutely the lifeblood of really any retail business now. There can't be anyone on here today that wouldn't want them as a customer base. Mm-hmm. So you need to be purposeful. You need to be socially responsible. You need to prove that you're not paying lip service to this stuff. You need to prove that whatever you sell, you are genuinely thinking about how you can improve things in terms of the environment and the impact on the environment. I have dinner, thankfully, every night. One of the benefits of the pandemic with my family, when I used to travel a lot, I didn't have so much opportunity to do that. And I get reverse mentored every single evening by my kids, because they care about this stuff deeply. So when we're talking about it, I genuinely learn very much from them about what matters to them. And these are just some of the ways that you can prove to them that you understand them and you care about them. Just one other thing: if you're selling fashion, and you've got model shots, for example, I'd move away, or you're using influencers in your marketing activity, I'd move completely away from airbrushing, from models who look like they belong on a catwalk, because Gen Z in particular rile against that. They're not interested. What they want to see is genuine, authentic human beings who are representative of them. So that hopefully just gives you a little bit of an idea of what their mindset is and what businesses can do to be more relevant to them.
Mm-hmm. I've got one question here. What will happen to the high street as we know it?
Well, that's a great question, and I kind of, to some extent, I'll try and give you my crystal ball view, because I guess none of us know completely for sure. But I think that if you look at what's happened with the big national retail chains, there was a rationalization that had to happen there anyway. We all overextended. We all opened up too many stores. And we didn't really take account of the migration to digital. So I think that was something that was happening and has been happening for a few years anyway. But I think that independent retail, I genuinely believe, I'm not just saying this because it's AIS, I really believe that independent retailers will fill some of those spaces, because the landlords, first of all, have to make the spaces more attractive. They have to make them more cost effective, which they weren't previously for an independent retailer. You can't sell somebody a 25-year lease anymore. It's not going to happen. Landlords have to do pop-ups and they have to make it affordable. So that opens up these opportunities to smaller independent retailers to expand their footprint a bit. But it also has to be much more experiential, both in the store and the environment. So it has to be a nice environment that we want to go to. And councils need to really think about, are they going to continue to see, charging for parking as a cash cow? Because the more they do that, the more they force us to make decisions about going elsewhere, going to a retail park or buying online. Why would we spend an extra £5 to park to go to a high street on top of whatever other inconvenience that might entail if the experience isn't brilliant and we can buy the same products online? So the councils need to think about, what do we need to do, and what does the government need to do to make sure we create environments that people want to go to? So that's about the right mix of retail, hospitality, leisure, and all the other things that I've mentioned.
Okay, that's great. Thank you very much. And then do you think that it sounds a little bit knee-jerk, but should stores diversify the product type that they sell, or do you think they should just continue doing what they do best?
Well, that's a good question. I think what I would be thinking about more, or first of all, rather than just diversifying and broadening the offer, albeit digital, obviously, and e-commerce has the opportunity to, a lot of your retailers will have very limited, physical shelf space. So that's where digital comes in, because you can have an endless aisle. You could have a kiosk in your store that opens up the website and allows you to sell a broader range of products. What I would be thinking about right now is what's happening with conscious consumption. What do I need to do over the next couple of years to be relevant for Gen Z and millennials, by demonstrating them that, I've got new product, I've got secondhand product, they can rent if they prefer to do that maybe, or I'm going to upcycle products as well. So you're starting to think about how to offer the right type of experience and the right type of product positioning, if you like, that customer base wants to buy. That would be my starting point. Then I think about, is there an opportunity to broaden out from what I have at the moment in terms of, what I sell? And there certainly would be in an online environment potentially.
Yeah. I mean, I've noticed that more repairers are kind of popping up within a store environment. So you can either have, if it's fashion, shortened at the time, or there seems to be a real upsurge in repair of clothes, repair of handbags, reconditioning of handbags, which are actually quite expensive. So I guess it's a way of generating income.
Totally, you're right. It's not only it's providing a service. So when I talk to retailers, I say, you need to think less about traditional retail and just selling stuff, and more about what do you need to do to become a service provider? How can you provide services that not only are potentially generating incremental revenue, but really driving engagement with your customers, driving lifetime value, driving retention, because you're making life easier for them. And if you think about it in a DIY context, I'm sure everybody's a bit different, but in a general sense, if you go back 5 years ago, 6 years ago, 10 years ago, it was all about do it yourself. That was the trend. These days, it's much more about do it for me. Because we're all task rich and time poor, when we go and buy a television, or when we go and buy a garden fence or a garden hut or whatever it happens to be, we're much happier these days paying that brand to actually install it for us, to build it for us. So we pay them a bit of extra money to hang the television, to put the bracket up, because I'm more of a damage it myself person anyway, rather than a do it yourself. And I think just because of the way life's gone, we've moved into that. So think about it in that context. What can we do to become more service orientated in everything that we do?
Yeah. And in your view, what product types do you think are going to bounce back more strongly after the pandemic?
Well, again, no question that formal wear is going to bounce back, because there's going to be a lot of weddings, there's going to be a lot of bar mitzvahs, there's going to be lots of events that we couldn't get to that we can in the future. We will be able to after May and June, and therefore we're going to want to get dressed up for that. We're going to be going to gigs, we're going to be going to the theatre, going to be over-indexing massively in all the stuff that we've been deprived of for, by that time, the best part of a year and a half. No doubt in my mind whatsoever. So those fashion, and not just formal wear, other fashion categories will generally do extremely well. Hospitality will obviously do extremely well, as I've just outlined, because we're going to want to go to all the places that we couldn't go to or haven't been able to go to the last year and a half. And of course, travel will also do well. And although there will be a reticence among some consumers about getting on a plane or going abroad, that will dissipate, I believe, pretty quickly. And I'm sure, like me, most of us will be quite keen to get on a plane and go on a voyage of discovery somewhere. But then again, staycations, trying. I just looked at a hotel and I was thinking of doing a drive around the north of Scotland. I saw something on telly this week, and for love or money, I saw this great hotel. No chance of getting a room there over the summer. It's completely fully booked. So, staycation businesses will do pretty well as well. Anybody in that sector, and therefore any retailers that are in these towns that lend themselves to staycations in Cornwall or the Lake District or wherever it happens to be, the north of Scotland, will do pretty well, over this period as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and quite a lot of our members are based around those areas, so that should be good news for them.
Yep.
And then just last question.
Yep.
Given your career to date and your expertise in retail, which UK or Ireland retailers do you think offer the best service and deliver that wow factor?
It's actually, I mean, if you're looking at a physical retailer, you'd probably look at someone like John Lewis, but I think they've still got a way to go, to be honest with you. And it's harder to do in a bigger business, but the fact that they've got an ownership model where the staff essentially own the business, it has a different commitment from the people who are on the shop floor serving customers. But actually, it's probably one of the pure play businesses, a business like AO.com. So some of you will have bought fridge freezers, tumble dryers, electrical appliances, white goods from AO, who used to be called Appliances Online. And what I like about them is that from bringing people into the business, in terms of what they're looking for people who are humble and ambitious, because humility drives people who are collaborative with their colleagues and people who want to go the extra mile for customers. Ambition brings you people who want to do well for themselves and for the business, and it's a really great combination. But humility also brings you people who are happy to hold their hands up when they get it wrong, which not everyone likes to do. And I think if you look at it right the way through the whole part of their business, I mean, John Roberts, the founder, I don't know if he still does this, but certainly in the early days, he used to spend an hour a day signing letters to go back to customers when they were complimenting them about, or when they were complaining about good or bad experiences. So he was getting personally involved. And then if you look at the last mile of the experience on AO.com, when you buy a fridge freezer or a washing machine, normally the businesses that are installing those, the people who are doing the installation are being incentivized by how many did they install in a day, not what level was customer satisfaction with the experience. That is what they're measuring their people on. So you might only do 2 or 3 installations in a day, but they're focused on getting 90+% customer satisfaction. Whereas if you say to your logistics team and the people doing the installation, it's not about satisfaction, it's about how many you do in a day. You drive the wrong behavior. And therefore, they cut corners because it's all about speed and it's about volume and it's not about quality. So it's understanding what's important to customers and putting in place the right culture, the right measures right across everything that you do.
Okay, thank you very much. I've just bought a floor cleaner from AO, and I didn't know about their reputation for customer service, but I have to say it was second to none.
Great, there you go.
Interesting.
Thanks, Karen. Thanks for having me on.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm sorry that we couldn't ask all of the questions, but that was absolutely fascinating. And thanks very much for your time, Martin.
Thank you.
Bye.